All right, let's get this show on the road. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for June 20th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everybody in the audience to please mute your cell phone or other electronic devices. I'll ask our village manager to do a roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Trustee Dahlman?
Here.
Trustee Albinson?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn? Here. Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Orsic?
Here.
Trustee Apatow?
Here.
President Rintz.
Here. All right, item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked Trustee Dearborn to lead us this evening. Okay, item 3 is quorum check. Rob, you want to go ahead and,
Yes, thank you. First meeting in July is July 6th, and Trustee Albinson, I have you out for that meeting. Is everybody else okay for July 6th? And then July 11th, study session,
I'll be out as well.
okay? And then July 18th.
I'll be out for July 18th.
Okay, thank you. All right.
all right. Item 4 is public comment. This is the time of the evening where anybody in the audience who wishes to can come on up to the podium and share what's ever on your mind with Village Council. Would anybody like to share their thoughts tonight with Village Council? Come on up. Hi, Judy.
My name is Judy Rao. Jim and I live at 209 Fuller Lane. I think I've been known for my measured comments. They may not be so measured tonight. We live directly across the street from the project at 205 Sheridan. We have a ringside seat to the intrigue, the drama, and now the mass destruction that is going on across the street from us. What was purported to be a residential project to afford a young family an authentic suburban lifestyle is wreaking havoc on the lives of Winnetka residents, the village's natural resources, the sacred trees of our supposed tree community, the bluff, the roads, and the outdoor spaces of any of us who live near the work site. The traffic, the noise, the dirt make it impossible to be outdoors, and our houses literally shake daily. Given the scale of this project, all of this was knowable. It is the scale of a commercial development in what was a serene residential area. None of us had sufficient warning of what was going to happen, nor has the ensuing chaos been managed adequately. I have been confused and disheartened by the action or lack thereof of this board in recent months. At a meeting a couple of months ago, President Rintz announced with great pride that the village had engaged a coastal engineer. That sounded like a real step forward. Yet I have come to understand that coastal engineer was not part of the analysis of the Orchard 2020 plan. That is stunning to me. In another meeting, former trustee Andy Kripe spoke eloquently about the responsibility of the village board to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Winnetka residents. Tell me how you are doing so now. Meanwhile, the Park District is intent on forging ahead with their plans, which promise further dramatic changes to the waterfront and significant disruption to what was a tranquil jewel park along the North Shore. In my opinion, what is going on at 205 Sheridan is a blueprint for what Orchard 2020 plans to do with the 70 feet of bluff and parkland that is still at play in the land swap lawsuit. If nothing else, hopefully the travesty of what is going on now will propel the village to assert its right to prevail on waterfront issues and further do whatever is necessary not to hand over any portion of Winnetka's crown jewel park, its natural bluff, its stunning berms, majestic trees, and spectacular views of the lake. The damage done to the bluff at 205 is irreparable. I think it is your responsibility to ensure such devastation is not replicated. Now is the time for bold and decisive leadership, and I sincerely hope you will answer the call. Respectfully, Judy Rao.
Thanks, Judy. Would anybody else like to address council? Ted?
Hi, Ted Winnichenko. So, you know, the Bluff is just one example of what I feel is this village's and this council's, prove me wrong, disregard for that oath right there. The oath was that you would leave this better for everyone, that you would follow your own laws, right? But month after month, I'm coming across all sorts of documents that show that that is exactly what isn't happening. The council had 2 secret meetings for ostensibly to discuss setting a price to sell village land, vacate village land. But there was never a council meeting in public to consider whether they should settle that land. And when the council met, it was presented a history of that land, that walkway by New Trier, and why it had happened and how divisive closing the walkway was in 2000. But didn't matter, because what the council did is in 2 secret meetings, they decided to sell the land, give it away for less than market value to the owners next to it, and didn't consider the implications to the students of New Trier, their safety, and the possibilities for the future. I find that shocking and disheartening. The council, the village has placed private property signs on village land at Spruce Streets. They remain. The village put up a fence on Willow without a permit, which they are required to by their own laws to get. But we leave it there, because what we want to do is we want to block village access, public access to the village-owned beaches. And I think the village is trying to just keep giving away land. After all, if we look at the sidewalk across from New Trier, what happened was 20 years ago, it was blocked off. And then it was an easy step for the council to secretly, and it was secret, give it away. Yeah, I mean, if I'm wrong, if you think I'm wrong, prove it. Show the documents. You can easily choose to release the closed session meeting audio transcripts so that everyone can hear what was discussed and how that decision was reached. But the village, you know, 20 years ago, the president and the council didn't give it away because there was a lot of dissent, and now you had 2 secret meetings to give it away. I see that this is going to happen. I feel like this is going to happen at the Lakeshore. All those street ends, the street ends with fake public or private property signs, the street ends that are blocked off by fences, the street ends where homeowners have encroached and the village has done nothing to push back. You know, it's only going to be a matter of years, and then the village will come back and they'll have a couple secret meetings to decide how little to give that land away for, and then there'll be one meeting one day where, oh, hey, we're going to vacate all these street ends because, you know, it saves us money, we don't have to maintain them, and we have less liability. You know what? If I'm wrong, if I have said anything that is incorrect, prove it. Show the meeting minutes, release the audio transcripts of what you said in closed session. If you have nothing to hide, there should be no problem. But I feel that what's going on at the lake and all these other things show that what really matters isn't the people of the village, it's the people on the lake and the people that own property and how the village can give them more at the expense of everyone else.
Thank you, Ted. Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close public comment and we'll move forward. Item 5 is reports. We'll start with trustee reports, and we'll start with Tina.
No report, other than I want to congratulate the festival. I thought it was well, and especially thank Village Services, Public Works, Police, and Fire. I think they did a fantastic job.
Thanks. Kirk?
No report.
Bob?
No report.
Kim?
2 reports.
2 reports, awesome.
Last night I attended the Landmark Preservation Commission where they had some routine business in regards to demolition permits, but they also approved several isn't it on? Should be on.
Red is dead. Okay.
Several preservation awards which will be presented to us shortly. So that's a very positive thing. The second thing I wanted to report on was our farmers market project. We've now had 3 weeks in, and I think it's working really well. Just so the public knows, what we are doing is we're gathering all the comments every week, and we do detail them out and provide them to Rob Bahan and the staff, who shares them in turn with the council. And those that require specific follow-up or other action, they are doing that. One thing I will share with all of us, though, is we are seeing over the last 3 weeks sort of a common theme to all of the comments that we are hearing. They fall, or to most of them. There are some unique ones, but most of them are residents expressing concern about lakefront development and development period, development period in town. Concerns about, just as we just heard, concerns about the bluff, our trees. When it comes to general development, the size and scale of some of the homes that are being built in town that aren't necessarily in keeping in the neighborhood. One architect who lives here actually expressed concern that he was starting to see homes built next to each other that have the same design elements. For instance, white with black trim and black shutters next to each other, and wondered if we had ever thought about trying to influence that or restrict that in some way. But at the end of the day, most of the comments have had to do with concerns about the lakefront, the park district development, et cetera. So I don't know if Rob want to chime in? They were, I'll put the table.
Yeah, I think you're very accurate. I thought, people are very respectful. What was interesting to me, a lot of new faces I've never even seen before, showing great concern for what's happening on the lake. It is very clear that this is a vast majority of what the homeowners are talking about and thinking to protect our lake and our bluffs. And, it is not falling among deaf ears. There's also some comments on One Winnetka, very hopeful. They've seen the plans and very appreciative, and a couple of interesting ideas for that. But overall, just a very hopeful on that One Winnetka will continue to move forward.
Great.
That's it, thank
Bridget?
you.
No report.
Rob?
I'm good.
Okay. Village attorney?
No report tonight.
Village manager?
Yes, a brief report this evening. Many of you saw the fest, and the fest organizers have a brief presentation, and I've asked them to take just a few minutes tonight to share with the council.
Great.
We're going to get everything hooked up here. It's a short 30-minute recap.
That's not what you said.
There's a group dance
And-
session that will be
And Scott will be reciting poetry.
Exactly.
Theoretically.
I will start by, first of all, apologizing to our JP Morgan neighbors for extending the meeting before they get there, but I will make a recommendation to them that if they really want to build a private wealth management business on the North Shore, they should become sponsors of the Winnetka Music Festival. A great way to get your name in front of 14,000 very excited North Shore people. So yes, as Rob said, we're here to talk about the music festival this weekend, which was, I think, certainly by our humble opinion, a great success. I'm not sure that I would have envisioned 7 years ago continuing to stand here and being the one talking about the Music Fest, but here we are, and I think it's incredibly necessary to recognize the hard work of the village staff, without whom this festival, certainly at this scale, would just not be possible. And I think it's probably one of the things that makes it possible for a village like Winnetka, in terms of our size, to put on something of this scale, which is, I think, certainly unique on the North Shore and probably unique in the Midwest from what we know. Before I get into talking about the staff, and then Mark maybe and Val talking a bit more about the impact of the festival, some of our staff members are here tonight. Not everybody is here. We probably have a dozen people who really are committed to making the fest a success and working throughout the year and certainly throughout the weekend, putting in a lot of effort. John McGrath, who's in the back row, who ran the South Stage and has run many stages throughout the years. Nothing goes wrong on John's stage. Everything runs on time, so he's done a great job. Jordan Prager, along with Holly Collier, who's not here tonight, handled the chapel stage, which is probably one of the best listening events for those of you who got to spend time there. It's just a great way to hear these musicians in a really quality space in our village. Stephanie Thiede, along with her partner in crime, Sarah Weiss, handle 180, 200 volunteers, which requires an extraordinary amount of babysitting to get them in the right place at the right time, but we always seem to do it. And then sitting next to her, Andy Knott, who is kind of the jack of all trades, and wherever it is, whatever needs to be done, whether it's moving ice, whether it's moving water, whether it's managing a stage, Andy is there to jump in. And I'm going to save Terry Dason for last. You know, there's a lot of elements that go into this fest and needing to make it a success. It's the residents, right? It's the village, and it's the businesses on Elm Street and Lincoln. And this is an intrusion, right? This is not every business is Little Honeycomb and Hometown that stand to make, you know, a fair amount of money here. For them, for some of them, they give up a weekend of business. And it's a big sacrifice, and they talk to Terry about it. And Terry has very patiently explained to them the importance of the fest to the village and the reputation of the village. And I think that it's something that, you know, is a tough argument, certainly in early June, but I think it's one that hopefully pays off, you know, for the businesses over the long run. So, you know, for those of you who are there, over the weekend we had some 14,000 people. We had about 7,000 people each night. It was, you know, quite an effort, and it's quite an effort to do something where really you set it up, you execute, and you tear down all in 4 days. And if you walked around the village on Sunday, it was hard to tell that there was a festival here, and that's really driven by the village staff. You know, they do a lot of the work, and it starts, you know, Kristen, who, you know, 5 o'clock on Friday night is sitting at her desk and gets a frantic call from me. Wi-Fi at the merch tent isn't working. She comes over, fixes it, right? That's not something that's in her job description. You know, you've got, obviously, Brian Keys, all this stuff that gets set up ahead of time, you know, from an electrical point of view. That's kind of come to be expected. What he did this year, Saturday morning, we have an electrical problem, I'm calling him at home. He's talking us through how to fix it. He's there at the festival with his wife. One of the food trucks loses electricity. Who pops up and says, let's go fix it? Brian Keys. You know, it's that kind of attitude where they've come to own this, right? They feel an ownership of it. You know, Mark Janicki, the number of hours of he and his staff figuring out how to close streets. You know, how do we do it in a way that doesn't adversely impact the businesses as much as could be? You know, the fact that he comes in on Sunday to allow us to get into the Public Works warehouse. The fact that, you know, he's responding quickly when, you know, here we are Friday, at 4 o'clock, we're an hour away from the festival. We have no garbage cans and no recycling bins because one of the vendors dropped the ball and had called me to say, oh yes, just confirming we're going to deliver everything on Monday. Monday? You know, Mark jumps in, we've got stuff, let's bring it over, let's get it set up. I mean, that kind of attitude. And then, obviously, Chief Ripka and Chief O'Connell. You know, to have their presence there certainly made the festival feel incredibly safe, but they also did it in a way that I think made residents feel incredibly comfortable. And I think that it's the engagement that they have with the community, the way that their officers present themselves and engage with people, that just, you know, makes everybody know that things are under control. We had a couple minor incidences during the headliner, and, you know, everybody springs into action, and there's really probably most people in the crowd didn't know what was going on. They just handled it professionally and quickly, and, you know, we got everything corrected. So it's just an amazing team, and it starts at the top, which I know there are going to be some embarrassed faces, but it does, right? You know, it does start at the top in terms of, you know, setting the expectations, and that's not, you know, that's not ignored. You know, quite honestly, it's really, you know, I think the best team that we can put together to make this happen. And I'm gonna backtrack a little bit because I missed one person, which is trustee Handler, who, without her involvement, we wouldn't know what bills had been paid, who hadn't been paid, whether we were paying anybody too much or too little, and she has kept us very much on track here in terms of knowing whether the Hallers and the Myers have to put the houses up for a second mortgage or not. So really, I mean, to the village staff, it's just a huge thank you and an appreciation. And Mark, you want to talk a little bit about the impact of what we've heard of the fest?
And Mark, and you all know Val, the reason why actually we have a festival, to the extent that she developed a music brand here in town that Scott recognized and began this whole thing back in 2016 as a dream that culminated in our first festival in 2017. So before, rather than talk about it, I thought I would just play a little video. I may be the first person to put in Instagram posts into record, but I thought a little recap of day one. You can see the crowd, you can see how much fun is being had out there. The children, the music, the community, the VIPs, and it's really quite a fantastic moment for this town. Our headliner, the kids. We've got beer on tap and we've got slushies on tap. Depends on how old you are. The other thing I'd say is that the reviews are flowing in from the press and from the residents and from people who don't even live in this town. And I really think that as usual, and we're very grateful for this, the press is very strong. And we really think that this is really, oh, there goes the mic. We really think that this is coming to define Winnetka in a certain way and in a good way. I'll read from, I guess this one's from Chris Veach. For those living in the city or the burbs, it makes Winnetka look pretty darn cool. We have friends who live in Lake Forest, Lincolnshire, Highland Park, and Libertyville who came to it, and it gives a great impression of what an awesome downtown Winnetka has to offer, and they return to spend more time there. People who live in the city are all excited to move to a place where they can keep attending a big local street fest as they have become accustomed to doing all over the city of Chicago every weekend. It gives Winnetka a fun reputation as a cool place to live. Another resident commented, the fest is a real builder of Winnetka community and culture. It shows what a wonderful place Winnetka is to live, particularly for young homeowners. There's nothing else like it on the North Shore, and it really puts Winnetka on the map. It makes Winnetka very attractive to young people. And those are just a couple of the comments of the dozens of comments that have come in already after this year's fest. I think I'll see if I can advance this to another comment here.
I am so excited to be here at the Music Fest. Finally, it is truly one of the best events in our community. The energy that it creates and all the people that it brings out, the young people, the musicians who are here, the children, people of all ages. It's just an incredible, incredible thing that our community puts on, and it brings joy to everybody all day and all night.
Very topical. And it is the Winnetka Music Fest, and so it is about the music, and we had some great acts this year. Val, just to mention a couple of them, if you don't mind.
We launched this Music Fest 7 years ago from my little house concert series that we started about 12 years ago. Scott came to me one day and said, why don't we make this bigger? Do you want to do a music fest? And I said, I don't think so. That sounds really hard. And here we are 7 years later. one of the things that I do in my business is I want to bring music to people who don't have time to find it themselves. So the goal for this festival was to bring a downtown quality festival up to the suburbs. So it was very important to me that we had real bands, real touring acts, acts that are starting to, gain traction in the industry. And our hit rate's pretty good because so many of the bands that we've had at our fest are now super famous and we can't even afford them at our fest anymore. And that's fun for, Billy Strings is one and Ash, but it's fun for people to say, I saw them in my town. Some of the bands we had this year, a very up-and-coming country girl named Haley Witters. She's going to go somewhere. A Grammy Award-winning Madison Cunningham, a 90s iconic band, the Wallflowers, a Peter Frampton vibe, Neil Francis, who's a local Chicago guy, and Michael Franti and the Spearheads at the end, which is just this happy love, peace, and harmony act, and I think the village loved him. So we're very proud of what we do, and it's very fun to bring it here. We can't do it by ourselves.
As a matter of fact, Billy Strings was playing down at Northerly Island, sold-out Northerly Island on the Saturday of our fest. So let me just cap it off with our Saturday headliner.
Thank you so much for having us here at the festival. It was an incredible experience, and right now the world needs this kind of coming together of just community, families, good vibes, local businesses, and especially with everything that's happening in our country right now, it's more important than ever to just feel that sense of connection with one another. And I also want to give a big shout out to everyone in Highland Park. We were supposed to play there last year, right before the shooting happened, and we're just grateful to be able to come back here this year and to feel this connection, that love, that community, and continued healing and support from me and from my band. So thank you, Winnetka Festival. It was awesome. We had a great day. If you're just thinking about coming here sometime, make sure you do it next year. It's going to be awesome. Love you.
So a great way to cap it off, and I think we've got something here, and it is coming to define Winnetka, and it is all about community, and we all felt that on Saturday night, and we thank everyone in the community, those who came, those who from the village who participated, and it's just a wonderful opportunity for all of us, and we're really pleased to have done it together with you.
Good recap.
Thank you three so much for all the hard work you've done. I mean, the joy on people's faces Saturday night particularly was just amazing. And just to see all the people I know in the community, knowing that there were people coming here from other places, and just the happiness that was going on everywhere was really, really something special. And I know it's something that we all envisioned in 2016. Maybe coming to be one of these years, and it really did. The things that I think about when I think about the fest this year, which were amazing, was it's grown up. Now it's not a little grassroots volunteer effort. That piece is still in there, certainly, but it's grown up to be a real live, legitimate festival that people are planning and putting on their calendars. And the second thing I heard from a lot of people outside of just the pure joy they experienced while they were there was that, Scott, you mentioned it, that sense of security and that sense of safeness. And I have to say that our two chiefs, both John Ripka and Brian O'Connell, were amazing. And to me, what was amazing about observing them wasn't that they were off to the side trying to run the show from some central area. They were out there on the street with their rank and file leading the way. And I have to say, with respect to Chief O'Connell particularly, seeing him stand out there at the corner of Elm and Lincoln and eyes focused on the entry gate, the man was not only leading his own troops, but he was policing. And even when I went over there to just say hi and thanks, you could tell his focus was totally on the job at hand, and nothing was going to divert him from. And what a way to lead from the front, because his people really showed the same professionalism and the same awareness, and a certain amount of, I guess you'd call it politeness, but without being chummy or too soft. So everybody got the sense that these folks were on call, they were ready to go, and they were watching. And I think it made everybody there, because let's face it, we're all a little concerned when it goes to coming into public places lately. I mean, it's always been on my mind, even when I've gone to shows indoors. So I really have to thank those two gentlemen for putting it forth and showing people how it's done right here in Winnetka. So, and thank you guys so much for all the work that you've done. I know how hard it is, and what a gift, what a gift.
I just thought I'd make one more comment, and that is, you know, when you have something going well, whether it's a business or a function, you have to think about succession planning, and you have to think about, if this is something that does become defined as Winnetka, how do we keep it going? Val Scott and I do plan to live forever, but we may not be doing this for all that long. So we're really pleased to be working together now with an iconic Chicago music organization, Space Evanston, and their larger mother company. But for those of you who don't know, they run Space Evanston, one of the best listening rooms anywhere. They recently opened the Morton Salt Shed. If you haven't been there, you should go. It's 5,000 seat venue in an old salt shed that you would never recognize as a salt shed. Thalia Hall, the Empty Bottle, etc. These are people that we've known Val and I have known for 15 years, and they are good people. They're Chicago people. They care about the music. They care about community. They put on Out of Space in Evanston. And we're really happy to have our lead there, Jake Samuels, and all of his team. And that's really one of the reasons why you see every year the professionalism notches up just a little bit. Every year we learn a little bit more, and every year we also realize those things that we need to add that we may not possess ourselves. And so our hope is that, to the extent that you wish this to continue, we're going to be able to be in a position to continue it. So I just wanted to give kudos to Space as well. They were phenomenal partners this year, and one of the reasons why things set up and broke down so well. So,
well, thanks again, guys. Okay, back to the more mundane business of the Village of Winnetka. So we'll move forward with item 6 at this point, which is the establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item 7 is the approval of the consent agenda, and I'll ask the village clerk to read the items on the agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the Village Council meeting minutes for May 16th, 2023, regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated May 19th, 2023 through June 1st, 2023 in the amount of $501,056.84. Ordinance number MC 06-2023, amending the Winnetka Village Code concerning the use and licensing of leaf blowers. Resolution number R62-2023, waiving bidding and approving an agreement with Baxter & Woodman for surveying and CAD services for the 2024 Street Rehabilitation and Public Improvement Project. Resolution number R63-2023, awarding a contract to Alpha Building Maintenance Services Incorporated for custodial services. Resolution number R64-2023, approving an agreement with B&B Holiday Decorating LLC for installation and removal of holiday lighting on public trees.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
That motion carries, thank you. Moving along, Item 8, ordinances and resolutions. There are none tonight. Old business, there is none. And new business, there is none. Oh, I take that back. It says none, but I know we have some, so. All right, the item on the agenda this evening is Chase Bank, 791 Elm Street, Plan Development Concept Review. Council will be reviewing a plan development concept plan application submitted by the applicant for 3-story commercial use building consisting of retail banking, office space, and above-ground and underground parking spaces. Community Development Assistant Director Ann Clausen is here tonight to review it. So Ann, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Rentz. Good evening, village trustees. This evening, I'm just going to briefly review the plan development process, the general site information, and the zoning relief that has currently been identified for the project at this point. As most of you are aware, the plan development process consists of 3 major public review steps. We are currently at the first of the 3 public review steps, the concept plan review. And at the concept plan review stage, an applicant presents its concept plan, and the council members may make any comments or suggestions they may have. And any of the views expressed are only preliminary and advisory, and only on an individual basis. If the applicant should choose to move forward with the development, they would then submit the preliminary plan development application, and there would be public hearings before each of the advisory bodies. And of course, all of those are public meetings and open to the public. And if the village council should ultimately approve the preliminary plan development, then the applicant would then need to submit all the necessary documents for final plan approval. You're all familiar with this subject property, which is located at the northwest corner of Green Bay and Elm. It contains the Chase Bank, which is a 2-story building with approximately 6,900 square feet of retail banking on the first floor and corporate offices on the second floor, which constitute approximately the same square footage. The site also includes the surface parking lot you can see on the north side of the building. The applicant has submitted a demolition permit, which was considered by the Landmark Preservation Commission last night. They did find that it warranted further review, so they did require the applicant to submit a historical and architectural impact study. The comprehensive plan designates the property as appropriate for commercial and mixed-use land uses. And as you can see here in the zoning map, the property is located in the C2 General Retail District, and the portion of the property along Elm Street is located within the overlay. In summary, the applicant's redevelopment project would consist of 3 components, which I will let the applicant go into more detail, but they are proposing retail banking space on the first floor, ground floor level of 6,800 square feet, office space on the second and third floor levels that would constitute approximately 24,000 square feet, and then proposing providing on-site parking of 32 spaces. 6 would be on the surface lot at ground level, and then 26 spaces underground in the lower level. So next I'll review the zoning relief that we've identified at this point. Once the applicant, or if the applicant decides to pursue the preliminary plan development, they would submit more detailed information at that point. So additional relief may be required, but this is what has been identified to date based on the plans available at this point. So the maximum permitted height is 45 feet and 4 stories. The building that is proposed would be 3 stories and measure 52 feet in height. So regarding this height exception, I'll let the applicant discuss their design components in terms of this excess, the height that's in excess of what's permitted. And, the maximum permitted front yard setback is actually 3 feet. The applicant is proposing that the building would be set back more than 3 feet along portions of the lot along Elm Street as well as Green Bay Road. And then the minimum required rear yard setback from the northerly property line is 10 feet, and the applicant is proposing less than that to accommodate the lower level parking that would extend nearly to that north property line. So regarding the parking, the proposed plan includes a total of 32 spaces. The 6 that would be provided at street level and the 26 that would be accessed from the north side of the building. It would have a 2-way drive aisle down to that lower level. The Village Code does require 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet of net gross floor area. The applicant is currently proposing approximately 17,000 square feet of gross floor area. Therefore, 35 spaces are required, and they are proposing 32. So Chase Bank would maintain their current retail banking on the site, and given portions of that would be along Elm Street, within that overlay district, they will need special use approval. Additionally, the surface parking that's identified here in blue, because it is at street level, that also requires special use permit approval. And as many of you are fully aware, with a plan development requesting zoning exceptions, the applicant is to demonstrate compensating benefits associated with the proposed development. The applicant has indicated that their compensating benefit would be construction of a new building that will be designed with sustainable strategies, such as reducing overall energy use and carbon, and responsible water use and materials management. So after hearing from the applicant, members of the council are asked to provide individual comments, suggestions, or recommendations on the proposed development. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions unless you'd rather hear from the applicant first.
Okay. I think what we'll do is if you have questions for Ann, not commentary on the building, but just questions on what she's presented, we'll do that now. We'll hear from the applicant. We'll then have questions for the applicant then we'll have public comment. Then we'll come up here and give our opinions. Does that all sound good?
Yep.
Okay. So any questions for Ann? Go ahead, Bob.
Ann, can you explain to us the issue around the utility easement?
One has not been established.
Understood, but what's the, you talked about burying the lines and how other properties might tie into that and that they're gonna think about it. What's
Right.
the village position on this?
Well, it's still very preliminary. So we have met with them in the Water and Electric Department to try and find an ideal location that would serve their use. They understand the challenges involved with locating it on the site and the need to bury the lines. So they are in communications. They are still amongst themselves doing their own due diligence. So there will be further communications with them to determine whether or not they're actually going to pursue that. But it's kind of a work in progress, I would say.
Maybe it's that I don't understand the issue that well, but.
Yeah, we're only a concept.
No, I know, but I'm just curious as to how this works into the village plans. I don't really understand the transformer and, how this might get in the way of long-term village planning for burying lines. I mean, is this something that, I just want to understand, is this something that we as a village really need to have or not?
Well, they're required to bury the lines. That's been a policy decision for development. So they're trying to follow that policy, and in order to do so, there's an existing pole there now that they would have to relocate, and there's other as we've described, other buildings that are serviced from that they're gonna have to work out how that's gonna be handled.
Okay.
So this is very early. Once, if they decide to submit for preliminary, there'll be more of those issues ironed out.
Tina?
And do you know what the current square footage is on that first floor of the existing building? Do we have the existing space, like,
I think the applicant can provide more details. I believe it's about 6,900 square feet. And the
Okay.
same with the second floor above.
okay. Okay, I'll ask them, thank you.
Okay.
Before I turn my head, Kirk, anything over here? Kim?
Good question. And for an office/retail building like this, does our zoning requiring the parking spaces, thinking that that's primarily to provide for employee use or customer use or a combination?
Combination.
Okay.
Anybody else? Rob?
Yeah, I'm becoming aware of how long projects take. Do we have any idea from shovel in the ground to completion, an estimate of how long this would tie up that area?
No, not at this time. The applicant may have an idea what they think their construction timeline may be, but
So I'm just watching some of the big projects around, think just going on and on, years, and that's what I'm just trying to figure out.
Well,
This is in the middle of our downtown.
and I think we should think about that from when they get their approvals, right?
Okay.
Any other questions for Ann?
Just one thing, the parking in that is all Green Bay Road, there's no Elm Street, the parking, I mean, the entries and exits are both.
correct. It's on Green Bay, right.
And the lot line that says goes, is that the underground lot line that's going, is it under, or is it the surface parking that they need the
The
variance?
underground, yes, it would be less than 10 feet. And the parking is allowed to encroach the required setback, the surface parking, but not the building beneath.
Okay,
so-
so, but it's the underground parking that would be that need the variance?
Within that set, right,
Okay,
yes.
great, thank you.
I have a question too, Ann. And maybe nobody knows at this point. Is there any possibility that this use is grandfathered? Since they were already,
1905.
I mean,
No?
It
There's
has
no
been a bank
grandfathering?
for,
because I know we had a realtor on the corner over there for 38 years. And, you know, it turned over, but it was the same. It was the same use, but just different iterations of the same company. So it's similar in a way because, you know, Chase is there today and Chase will be there theoretically if the project goes forward and they build the building. So I'm just curious whether that would be, and we probably have a good year to worry about that, but, or less, John, sorry. Any thoughts?
well, I mean, they're tearing down the existing building and constructing new. So one would say that it requires all the necessary approvals for the new
Okay.
development.
That makes sense. Thinking like a developer. Okay, well, why don't we have the applicant come on up and tell us more about their project?
Whoops. I'll get it set up, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if the music festival team is still here, because I didn't get my answer on the donation to their event, but certainly seems consistent with our view of Winnetka, and we certainly would be supportive of it. Why we think it's a great market and growth opportunity for us. The building is, by many of our standards, in poor condition. It's in need of full renovation. It does not support our footprint. And by the way, I should introduce myself. I did
Yeah, thank you, I was gonna
present.
ask you to introduce.
Yes, Christopher McKenna. I work for JP Morgan Chase. I represent the firm on their real estate investment decisions globally. And we are committed to this market and to Winnetka. I think, pre-COVID, we had you know, an interest in growing our footprint in this market and looked quite a bit. And COVID kind of put us on pause a bit, but we also saw that a lot of our customers who would visit us in downtown Chicago have opted to stay locally and really, you know, increase the urgency for us to really have a facility here to accommodate both our employees, which will probably double in size in this market, hopefully in this building. Our global mandate is to co-locate our businesses in one location. They complement each other. Retail banking complements our wealth management business, is very much integrated in that business today. We've approached this market, and I actually came in and looked at some of the options for our growth, and none of them complemented this location. And we quickly realized, you know, fortunately we have one of the better locations in the market. We did observe a building next door that was 3 stories, and we said, well, you know, can we add to it? Can we modify this building? And quickly we brought in John O'Donnell and Riverside Development, who are great partners, clients of the bank, as well as Gensler, who represents us globally on projects. And we bring, you know, all of you know, top partners to the table, which you'll hear a bit about the project, making it great. I would say, you know, we'll answer a number of your questions, and the technical team will do that. But I will tell you one thing: safety and security of this location is of utmost importance. We will not spare expense in disrupting the traffic flow, business flow in this community whatsoever. A good expression of that is what we're doing in New York City on Park Avenue right now. We are redeveloping our headquarters, same manner in which we are, you know, the first and foremost importance to our community is building the community. We invest in the communities that we do business in around the world, and that's how we feel about this this project. So I'll turn it over to our partners who can speak to the technical aspects of it and what we're working on, and certainly we're here for more questions as we progress. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm John O'Donnell. I'm CEO of Riverside Investment and Development Company. We are a Chicago-based developer, and our company is only about 10 years old, but in the last 6 years, we've delivered a little over 4 million square feet of office buildings. You know, I'm saying this really to present my qualifications. I'm not sure how to work this.
I don't think that was it, John.
No, you know, technology is not my game. John, what did I do wrong? Okay. Yeah, now you're way ahead of it. Okay. No, I don't think so. There we are. This down? That's what I did. Okay, we're known to build technology in our office buildings, and you can see how good this is. I guess I'll just start talking. Anyway, so we built 3 buildings in the last 6 to 7 years, and they included the William Blair's headquarters, Hyatt's headquarters. Those are all in one building, 150 North Riverside. Bank of America's regional headquarters, and then BMO's headquarters, which we recently completed about a year ago. These buildings have been very successful. They've been very prominent. We've been fortunate to get many awards, you know, and they're detailed on our website. Even though those are much larger buildings than what we're talking about, this is extremely important to me. I've been a Winnetka resident for 37 years. And I understand both the prominence of this site and also the quality and expectation of Winnetka. And, you know, and I'm absolutely committed to making sure that this is something that would meet your objectives, and we look forward to working with you on this. You got one that works? Okay. Okay. All right, so these are the 3 buildings I was talking about, and it also details a few of the awards. But you know, going back to that, you know, we're committed to doing this, and I know how prominent and how sensitive it is, and we've heard tonight how important it is to the residents that we do this. And frankly, I'd be very embarrassed if we didn't live up to your expectations. Development, you know, we're a developer, but the reality is developers really just arranges a number of different subs, and the quality of the team really dictates the quality of the development. With us tonight is Scott Hurst with Gensler, who's going to explain the property. One thing I do want to say, though, I heard about, we've never been late with an office building, and we commit to tenants when we're going to deliver and when they're going to be ready. And I don't mean that just here. I was involved in development, redevelopment, 40 million square feet at a prior job, and we were never late in an office building, and because we don't typically allow change orders. So at any rate, I expect the same here. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. And in addition to being tech support, my name is Scott Hurst. I'm a design principal at Gensler. Like Riverside, we have a lot of accolades here on the screen, but I think the thing that's most important to me and to our firm is our attention to our clients, our attention to the communities that we build in. 90% of our clients are repeat clients. We work on a variety of different building types, from financial institutions to retail spaces to office buildings around the world. We are committed to building iconic, local, contextual, sustainable, and socially responsible projects. That's what gets us out of bed every morning. That's what we're really passionate about. We've worked on a number of projects in the region here that both have sensitivities around historic preservation, sensitivities around the context of the neighborhood, about just breathing new life into some of Chicago's most iconic buildings, and we are humbled with the opportunity to be a part of your community as well. You mentioned timeline. Just to provide a little bit more color on that, we were here last night, as Ann mentioned, before the Landmark Preservation Committee review. We are going through the lengthy review process for the existing building and the demolition permit. We just began this process, as you guys are familiar with. We started back in May to put the preliminary concept together, which is what you guys have here today. We think the design process will take roughly through March 2024, with the permitting process following shortly thereafter if everything goes according to plan. Hopefully being able to start demolition of April 2024 with a little over a year construction duration from May of 2024 to the summer of 2025. So just over a year. I think it's worth pointing out that our first impulse is always to try to reuse the existing facilities when possible. That's the most sustainable thing we can do, but in this case, we found there are a lot of headwind when it comes to the existing structure. The fact of the matter is, as we pointed out, Chase just needs more space. We're looking to roughly double the head count. The site's really too constrained to expand to meet their existing and future needs, while also accommodating for the parking that would be required to support their future client base and future head count. The existing roof structure is not designed for vertical expansion. We actually looked into that and evaluated that. Could we go up rather than out? That is not possible with the existing structure. And complicating the matter even further, the existing interior walls are actually quite a few load-bearing walls, which would mean interior reconfiguration to optimize and find some efficiencies within the existing structure are just not possible. The existing roof and mechanical systems are, in fact, nearing the end of their useful lives, and we have found that the building envelope, windows, walls, and insulation are relatively inefficient by today's standards, and certainly energy efficiency, sustainability are things that we're going to talk a little bit more about here today, but it's top of mind for JP Morgan Chase. A little bit about the site history. You asked if the program could be grandfathered in. They have a long history of financial institutions at this corner, starting back in 1884, so over 100 years ago. The banks have existed at the corner of Green Bay Road and Elm. 1917, the building in the middle was built, and we'll talk a little bit more about that building as well. And then lastly, 1964, the building that we've all come to be familiar with today, sits on that site. It is uniquely a departure from that style that is really iconic and representative of a financial institution. Anne did such a great job going through the site. You guys are all familiar with this. I won't spend much time talking about some of these facts, but currently there's about 14,000 square feet of retail across 2 floors. There's an additional 9,000 square feet of very undesirable space that people are actually being housed in the basement of the building. Obviously, designing office space for a living, we don't like to see people in basements with no windows. 34,000 square feet of retail space and office space is what we're proposing across 3 floors with an additional 16,000 square feet of below-grade parking. So we're doing the best of our ability to fill the site with building and put parking underneath the building so it's out of sight, out of mind. The existing building's 35 feet to the roof and 56 feet to the top of the steeple. That height is very important to us as it does occupy that corner in a really prestigious way. That's why we're asking for the exemption to go with a 45-foot high roof and then some ornamental parapet work to really give some prominence and maintain the prominence that I think everyone comes to enjoy with the corner today. Going from 19 parking spaces to 32 parking spaces, and then last but not least, again, highlighting that focus on sustainability, really wanting to make sure that this new building sets a new standard for this community as far as responsible, sustainable building construction. To talk a little bit about the building itself and how we've arrived with the preliminary concept that you're seeing here today, starting first and foremost at just the building mass, just the height. We recognize that 45 feet is what's dictated, but again, thinking about that corner, recognizing that we would like to do something special there, looking for an exemption with that. We're certainly being cognizant of the surrounding neighbors, and stepping down the building from the corner to be more sympathetic to the 2-story building to the west, and really bring that building down to a scale that is much more in line with what you would expect to find throughout the downtown district. Another thing that we're looking to do is create not just distinction in the building height from a massing standpoint, but also in the expression of the building along the facades, just to create tapestry of facade that does relate more to the rhythm and the scale of all of the buildings that are marching down the street, recognizing that a 50-foot storefront, in some cases there's even 35-foot storefront, is about the scale of the rhythm that we see throughout the downtown district, wanting to do something similar with the way this building is being designed as well. And then, of course, the corner, really thinking about adding some special architectural feature to the corner to really continue to celebrate the prominence of this site as a gateway to the downtown district. So really imagining this building, again, as a gateway into Winnetka's Central Business District, a really highly visible landmark to the community, something that looks to seamlessly blend into the context of the neighborhood while keeping top of mind sustainability and a very forward-looking program for the building on the inside. So I mentioned the building built in 1917. We are really keying in on this as something that really exudes a sense of permanence and stability as bedrock into the community. It is recognizable as a financial institution, even making some nods as far as integrating a clock into the corner facade, looking at some other interesting architectural detail. Again, this is very preliminary, early in this design phase, but really thinking about ways we can treat that corner in a way that's special, that's recognizable as you come down Green Bay Road. The other thing that we're picking up on in this building and taking note of from the design guidelines is that structural rhythm that is honestly expressing the rhythm of the structure on the inside of the building, making sure that telegraphs through to create the depth, the texture, the shadows, and all of the other architectural elements that really make a building feel authentic and real and integrated into the fabric of the downtown. So some primary features, I'm going to go through these really quickly. Drawing inspiration from the old building that we just looked at, acknowledging this corner, using materials that are in keeping and with the materials that you would expect to find in Winnetka, that architectural rhythm and expression, and environmentally conscious design are some of the key features that we are exploring at this phase of the design. We can come back to these if need be, but basically these two elevations start to highlight, again, the way we're looking to break up the facade, so it's not one continuous 150-foot long expression, but rather feels like it's a series of buildings that are more in keeping with the scale of the surrounding neighborhood. Similar on the Elm Street elevation, similar expression, looking at creating some setbacks and providing that relief to maintain this vibrant, active pedestrian street front. Just to get familiar with the site here, a couple of key features to point out. One of the exemptions that we're looking for is actually just along the corner, given the way that it's spelled out in the zoning. We would like to set back this corner and maintain essentially where it's existing today to just provide some relief at that corner condition rather than crowding the lot line in particular. And then the other thing that came up was the transformer location. This is the preliminary proposed location for the transformer that would be able to be used to connect the neighbors and to bury the lines that are currently there today. So that is encroaching on our site quite a bit. In fact, when you see the ground floor plan, you'll actually see we've lost a couple of parking spaces to provide an adequate home for this transformer pad in that area, which is another reason we're asking for some ability to, reduce the parking count a little bit. The entrance to the site is off of Green Bay Road. The entrance to the parking below is completely within the site with no access necessarily to the alleyway. So the garage entrance would be completely concealed from the street front. We are exploring options for entry both from our surface parking lot along Elm Street with a potential pedestrian entrance off of the corner as well. Moving down to the ground floor, you can see here the property line to the north. The basically retaining wall of the lower level garage would go beyond what is required for a rear yard setback. That would not be visible from up above, but merely as a means to structure the garage itself. The upper floors are, again, very early in their planning phase, but basically you're seeing 2 levels of corporate offices with a feature stair right at the corner, becoming a really beautiful architectural element that would be visible from the street. So, I don't think I'll spend a lot of time going through these. These are the exemptions that we are looking for. The special use for this being a retail bank, the overall height ordinance for the 45 feet, looking to go to 52 feet to the top of the parapet. 45 feet would still be our roof line. So just to reiterate that would be in compliance with the zoning ordinance, but looking to do something special in that corner. The front yard setback that I mentioned at the corner, the rear yard setback only below grade, and then the on-site parking going from 34 spaces to 32 spaces. We rounded down from 35, so 34 to 32. And those 2 spaces are coming from that deficit is coming from the location of the transformer that's on the northwest corner of the site. So with that, I just want to end on this. Certainly from a compensating benefit standpoint, we recognize the beauty of this community. We recognize just the importance of this site in the community. Certainly open to having a dialogue with the village for that easement location to work with you guys to find something that's conducive and suited for everybody's needs. The new building will be designed with very high level of sustainability, as I mentioned a few times, with LEED Gold as a minimum target for us. We're looking at all sorts of really progressive ideas for how we can really push the envelope there. Collaboration with the Historical Society, really to honor the history of the site, recognizing it's been a part of this community for a very long time. And then streetscape enhancements along Green Bay and Elm are things that we're also very keen on looking into as well. So with that, turn it over to you guys. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we'll go ahead and work on questions for the applicant. Bridget, you look really anxious, so go for it.
I feel like I was like, maybe I ask, maybe I don't. But can you define parapet? Because it sounds to me like a parapet is like a little thing on top, and the parapet here that you're differentiating
Sure.
from the roof line is like half the building.
So parapet is just a projection of the roof that goes up above the roof line. So it could be tiny, it could be the entire extent of the building. A lot of times we use that for fall protection. A lot of times we use that to screen mechanical equipment. In this case, it would serve as both an architectural feature and an ability to screen any sort of rooftop mechanical equipment as well. So we're certainly looking to get a lot of use out of that extra couple of feet.
So the roof line is the rest of the building that's not the parapet. And what is on top of the parapet? Like, does it have a roof? Because it's,
So it's just, it's like almost like a cornice, if that's a better architectural jargon to describe it. The parapet would be basically a wall that extends up above the actual horizontal surface of the roof.
and are there offices or what's in that part of the
no.
wall that's above the roof?
Nothing.
It's just empty?
If this is the roof, this is the parapet. It's just an extension of the wall that you can use to provide.
So the 7 additional feet are empty?
Correct.
Can you put
And
that
exposed.
side by
So
side
the
back
roof
up?
is sunk down behind that wall, correct? So if I was standing on the roof,
Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
be standing next to a 7-foot wall.
So it's just a wall?
A wall with some architectural features provides mechanical screening,
Okay. Thanks.
which, I'm sorry, that's not helpful. Robert, was there a side by side you'd like to, was this the image you were looking
The
for?
current building and the proposed building, did you have one with a parapet on it currently? And what you're proposing?
I do not have an image of those two buildings side by
You
side.
didn't, okay, I'm sorry. And the current building right now, it is 45 with an architectural parapet over it.
I think you can see the HVAC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That. So that roof line is 45, or less than 45.
So on top of this roof, there's mechanical equipment with additional screening. You can't see it from this view. Our intention would be to screen our mechanical systems as well, to be out of sight for the
So
pedestrians.
the one that I'm looking at right now, the current one, is 45 feet. And the new one is 45 feet, but it has the mechanicals up there like this one, but with a wall around it.
Correct.
Thank you.
The top of the steeple here is 56 feet.
Okay.
Others?
Yeah, I'll go. Are we asking
Questions.
questions? Okay, so, Art Deco, I get that you went back to 1917, but I'm not seeing any current Art Deco in town. Is there?
In town,
Yeah,
there's very little Art Deco remaining in the downtown district.
right. Okay, so there's nothing really that would, I don't know what this is, the 1964 colonial, maybe?
Slightly Georgian colonial.
Yeah, okay, so, but,
Related to that?
so, the new building was referring to Art Deco, and I think the comment was, the proposed design carefully considers the context and character of the surrounding neighborhood, but I don't see any Art Deco in the surrounding neighborhood, but I didn't know what's classified as Art Deco.
So Art Deco is a style that is obviously listed in your guidelines. The new building, the proposed building, I would not say is a strictly Art Deco
Okay.
style. We're not adhering to Art Deco. There might be some Art Deco references,
Okay.
including some ornamentation, some of the detailing. I would say that's more of the Art Deco that we were referring to. As far as the context, I think for us, a focus on materiality, scale, rhythm, texture, size of the windows, the size of the glazing, references to some of the arches that are in the neighborhood were our effort to reference and be contextual to the downtown district.
Okay, and maybe this is, I don't know if anybody's here from Chase, but I'm kind of curious about regional brand, so you have a very massive building in Wilmette, right? The old Bank One building. Is that also going to be used as a regional combined location? Because there's a lot of office space in that building, right?
Yes, we're expanding in that building. I'm not sure we will occupy as much of the upper level there as we are here.
Okay, so this is not, you're not consolidating your Wilmette operations
No.
here, it's just you're growing both.
Correct.
And you really think you need that much office space for, I'm just, you know, because I know banks.
Yes, and you know, this space, it's not necessarily office workers. These are client engagement managers. So there's a big client engagement. We'll have a client center to welcome guests in. So most of the employees here will be client-facing.
Sure.
Often in the market, as well as seeing customers on premises.
I was just more thinking about the second and third plans that show tons of offices and conference room and.
Yeah, a lot of those are private offices to meet with clients.
Okay.
And then the conference rooms are, like I said, we have a standard of client center that we use, which is incorporated in that layout, which doesn't identify how we're using the space, but.
Okay. And I guess I'm just curious, is this like pre-COVID kind of head count, square footage assessments, or is this? Because it
Not
just
this-
seems like every office is virtually vacant, even some of the banking offices, so.
Have you read about JP Morgan? We're back at work, and
Yeah, well,
we.
so my daughter is actually in New York, and it's like nobody is in the office at the banks.
Not on my floor, but.
Okay.
we're-
Okay,
no.
I was just curious if
Yeah.
these,
We're being mindful globally
Yeah.
around delivering space that is appropriate for some of those changes.
Yeah.
This is, and actually we use the term in our wealth business, it's one-to-one seating for our bankers in a location like this, because
Okay.
they do operate in person with their clients. Again, they're out on the road as well and seeing
Yeah.
clients in other locations, but this is what we refer to as one-to-one, whereas in other locations, we have an open seating plan that, you know, accommodates maybe 60% of the workforce on a daily basis, but that's not what this location is.
okay. And then one last question about the transformer location. Can, and maybe this is a question for staff too, can it go into that area on the first floor of the parking garage? There looked like there was some additional space.
Brian doesn't like.
He doesn't like it in parking garages? Oh, okay. So that's been asked and answered.
We just went through that with One Winnetka.
I thought we did, okay.
We wanted to put it there as well. That's a great question.
Yeah. Okay, let me just see here. Great. I think, did you think about activating the portion on Elm that's within the overlay, trying to break up the facade and make it look less institutional and more retail-like? I know you have security and safety issues with banking, but
Are you talking about from a program standpoint or from a facade articulation
from a
standpoint?
facade, because that's within our overlay, the retail overlay, and that's one of your exemptions. Is there a way, it looked like, and I know this is just conceptual at this point, but is there a way to kind of alter the look?
Absolutely.
make it
I
more
think one of the
inviting.
things we're being very mindful of is to make sure that the storefront along Elm Street is very vibrant, very active. We've started to do some preliminary planning inside the retail branch to really push the excitement, the energy, the gravity of that space down towards Elm Street. The main entrance is actually right where it is today. We imagine that being very bright, very lit, very safe, secure, and then even where that ramp is cutting through the site, you can see we've created a little bit of area right there to activate of some kind. We're still exploring options for how we activate that corner, but it's definitely been a keen interest from the client to make sure that the entire length of the Elm Street elevation is active and vibrant and full of life.
Okay.
As far as the facade articulation, again, very early in the process, but we certainly look to make sure that fits in and has the texture and the rhythm that you guys would expect in this area.
Okay, great, that's it. That's all I had.
Anybody down here? Anybody? Kim?
Couple questions. How tall are the ceilings within each of the floors?
So Right now, the floor-to-floor height's roughly 15 feet apiece. The ground floor, we may end up squeezing the top 2 floors to provide more generous ceiling heights on the ground floor, which with that, we would expect no less than 10 feet finished clear to the ceiling
On the second and third floor?
for the second
With
and third
The
floor.
first floor being,
Potentially taller on the first floor. We're still working through that with structural engineers and
okay.
so on and
Yeah,
so
because
forth.
I'm looking, obviously, I realize when you do the math here that there's floors and ceilings between each floor, but it says like it's the first one's 15 and then 14 and then 16. So that just threw me off a little bit, but it would probably be 15-ish plus 10 and 10.
It
So
would,
would you-
the floor-to-floor heights would potentially be 16 to 18 on the ground floor with maybe 14 and 14 above.
Oh.
So we're still working through some of that, but
Oh, okay. The other question is I saw a couple references to putting a door at the corner, which I think does look so pretty and welcoming, even though functionally everybody might go in the Elm Street door. And I know there are a couple plans that, or concepts that show it, but if you did, wouldn't you lose that staircase that you're talking about, the feature staircase?
again, this is all part of what we're exploring
Yeah,
right now.
okay.
We've gone through a myriad, I'm smiling at our team here, we've gone through a myriad of different options for the most
'Cause
optimal
I do think
location.
that looks so well, that like gives the building a nice elegant.
We would
entrance,
certainly
yeah.
plan to have whatever's happening on that corner, whether it's a functional door or a faux entrance, be,
Okay.
you know,
So lots of discussion.
welcoming
Yeah.
and probably lit with other, you know, ornamentation, whether that's lanterns or planters or whatever. But right now, we're challenged by splitting the building into basically 3 separate entrances, one along Elm, one at the corner, and one at the parking lot. So from a safety, security standpoint, that's something we want to really look at closely to make sure we arrive at the right location for that entry point.
Okay, and sort of going back to Tina's point, this is a little contemporary looking, even though I know it's preliminary. Were there any other design concepts that were considered in terms of architectural style?
There's still a multitude of design options that we're considering, and as we advance this, I think you'll see with the addition of materials, some of the maybe Art Deco nods. This building is a beautiful Indiana limestone building. We're looking to use a similar material in that building as well. So I think some of those details, as once they get rendered and more developed, will certainly bring that more historical references that maybe you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, one more? Sure, why not? So you know the Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and there is no ugly in here. Don't
I hope
worry.
we're not the ugly.
No. I know your work, Gensler's work, so it's terrific. I think the good is the idea of instead of one big mass, that you're actually creating a series that flow together but don't look like one big massive wall of building, which I think is really, really smart. And I think, you know, I always worry in communities like this where, you know, you take up a lot of space, it just looks like a mass. So I think that's great the way you're doing that. I'm still trying to scratch my head on the height. From before, where you have a feature that goes up, you're kind of keeping that up. And it looks a little bit looming to me, and, you know, it's just something I have initial concerns on from a standpoint of how is it gonna loom versus a nice, cool feature versus
Sure.
kind of the whole thing is up and looming over the street.
That's a great point. No, we are looking at where that height adjustment takes place. If you can see from the elevations, we are stepping it down, so it
Oh, yeah, I
gets
saw it.
lower as you approach the rest of the downtown district. As we look at what's there today, that height, again, at about 56 feet, does feel like it has some prominence on the corner and creates a nice gateway. Where that line actually exists, I think is something we're still in the process of exploring. Another reason that we like going a little bit higher is because that does allow for us to step down and create that differential that you're describing, that you liked. We would not be able to go any lower than the 45 feet and still have adequate ceiling heights for the spaces underneath, so going up was really the only option. And at this point, again, just where we are in the process, would like to make sure that we are giving ourselves adequate wiggle room to make sure that we're able to screen any sort of unsightly mechanical units that are potentially going to be on the top of the building. But again, something we're continuing to explore.
You know, a lot of positive, that's the one that just got,
Sure.
I'm still looking at hard.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure.
Parking, is that for employees or customers?
Both.
Underground?
Both would be underground, yep. There's, I believe, 9 spaces up top and 22 up below? 26 below, sorry. Oh, it's right there on the screen. I should just read it.
Are there 6 spaces up top or 9 spaces?
6, I apologize.
Is the transformer location a hardship for you? I mean, it sounds like there's a bit of a trade-off for convenience or desirability for servicing the transformer versus the need for parking.
I think the village's need for parking is something we've taken very seriously, so we've wanted to make sure to provide as many spaces as possible. Obviously, the location of that transformer does impact the number of spaces we're able to provide. It's a pretty tight site, especially if we're trying to get parking below grade. I do think it's a good concession to allow for, you know, future plans for utilities to be located in that location if that's a location that works well for the village. I think it's probably going to require a lot more study, but at this time we feel pretty good about it in that location. Again, certainly not wanting to impede any future plans you guys have for development within the district.
Do you mind going to an image with the proposed rendering with the corner? Can you describe what was the thought process with the clock being included in this design? It seems a bit of more like a piece of jewelry on the building and less functional.
It was a nod to the previous bank that was there. There's a clock on the building today, something that I don't think we're married to, but it's certainly something that we feel like does sort of mark what has been on the site historically.
What's the thought process right now about what could be the materiality around the clock or whatever that, you know, whatever's on the vertical face?
So currently what's being depicted is a glass opening which would highlight the stair beyond, a spiral staircase of some sort that connects the two floors to levels 2 and 3. Tina, you asked about Art Deco influences, an ornamental metal screen that may have some, whether it's local references that would be unique to Winnetka, whether it would be Art Deco inspired filigree and detailing. That's what's being depicted currently. Again, something that we're very early in the process of studying.
And do you mind going to the image with the existing building from 1964? Actually, don't you have another image with just the 1964 building, just so it's a little larger? And the question is, do you happen to know off the top of your head, what is the approximate height of the existing wall that's on the building? So the 2-story portion, essentially where it meets the roof.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could give you an estimate if.
That's okay. And then right now, you stated earlier the top of the existing cupola is around 56?
56. The roof line, so not the brick, but the roof line is around 36 feet.
36.
I don't know where the brick line actually starts.
The roof line's at 36 at the roof edge?
At the higher.
At the higher roof edge.
Correct.
Got it. And approximately where is the 56 foot? Is that at the top of the?
That's here.
Right up there. And so what's being proposed is 52, so about 4 feet lower, so maybe, yeah, right about there. Was there a specific rationale with a 7-foot parapet, or why you ended up at 52? Was it just based on aesthetics and how that stepped down with whatever the limestone is around?
Yes, again, based on the ability to differentiate the 2 different massings of the building, knowing that we can't go any lower than the 45 feet to meet our needs, just from a proportional standpoint, and wanting to leave the door open to make sure that we are able to cover some of the mechanical equipment that may exist on the roof. So is it an exact science at this point? Is it 52 feet? Is it 51 foot 6? Is it 51 foot? No, but we felt that was a number that we were comfortable going in at, and still allowing for the amount of detailing and the amount of ornamentation that we would like to see on the corners of the building, and again, to hide whatever else might go up there.
And do you mind going to that rendering that you had of the proposed building, a similar shot? So is there a possibility where this corner entrance would be the primary entrance, or not whether it is an entrance at all? It might not be an entrance?
I
is that
think
what
for
you're
the functionality of the space within the building, that we are proposing the entrance to be further down Elm, where it's located today, adjacent to the on-street parking. Knowing we've done some pedestrian studies, Elm Street is obviously a much more pedestrian-friendly street, a much more activated street, gets off of that busy corner. We think it's a much more suitable location for an entrance for our users.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Chris?
One more question. You said that you would be doubling the amount of employees that are there. What would that number be?
Do we know the number off the top of our heads?
I think probably close to 80, maybe 80 or 100. But
And
again,
you-
not on a full-time basis.
So with 32 parking spots for 80 employees and customers? How does
Yes.
that work?
Well, we would utilize what is being utilized today, some of the village parking, as well as, the street parking.
If you only hire Winnetka residents, they could walk to work,
Yeah.
just saying.
Well, we do have a number of employees that do take the train today, and that is a big benefit for us.
That's a good point.
Chris?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I think, first of all, I think it's great that JP Morgan Chase is making this investment in Winnetka. So I applaud you for that. I think it's great. I think most of the exceptions seem to make a lot of sense, including the transformer for the parking, though the parking, I think, is an issue, ultimately. And the setbacks seem all reasonable. The one, and again, it's been touched on already, is on the height. And I just want to dig a little deeper so at least I can understand this a little bit. And I think Kim talked about this. First floor, 15 feet, second floor, 14 feet, third floor, 16 feet, 7 feet to the parapet. There's been some consternation over the years in town here on height of buildings and that type of thing. So I just know that's an issue kind of going in. One Winnetka, I believe the proposal is also 52 feet peak, and I think the fourth floor is set back in one Winnetka. We just approved a building down the street from you, going north on Green Bay Road, 564 I believe it is, Green Bay Road, the real estate office, that's 45 feet. That's 4 stories. Again, I understand residential versus commercial use might be a little different. But this is clearly a higher building than we've ever seen there, and it's, just want to make sure we get this right. Can you explain, you say that you need 45 feet to meet your requirements. These seem like very generous heights for the floors. Why 45 feet? Why can't this be brought down to 48 feet and with the parapet, and then the lower level, whatever, goes to 42 feet or something like that? For 3 stories, it seems to be a generous height.
Sure. So this is roughly 11 or 12 foot ceiling here. For the type of spaces that we look to use in this building, for the longevity of the building, we certainly would like to get as gracious of ceiling heights as humanly possible. Given the fact that the engineering for this isn't done, we don't exactly know the depth of the structure, the amount of equipment, the roof drains, so on and so forth. We wanted to make sure we were coming in now and having this conversation to make sure we were able to achieve everything we're able to achieve, knowing that the height might be sensitive and there's probably some ability to bring that down. 15 feet floor to floor in a commercial office building with today's mechanical systems is pretty standard. A ground floor of a slightly taller height is also, I think 18 is typically what we would see. So you can imagine the floor to floor height starts to stack up. It gets us right at that 45-foot limit. Where we are in the process, we just felt that now's the time to have the conversation to see if we could afford ourselves a little bit of extra wiggle room to get the heights that we need, to do the engineering, and to still celebrate that corner in a way that we think would respect what's there today and serve you guys well for the future.
Okay. So I guess what I just heard was that the 52 feet is the big ask. That's the max, but there's room to go lower. That's kind of what I will take from that. But I think there'd be appeal to bringing that down a little bit, if possible, but that's just my opinion.
And if we were to focus the 52 feet on the corner element as opposed to bringing it further down the elevations, is that something that you guys?
Say that again, 52 feet?
Rather than it be across the entirety of that front volume, if it was just focused on the corner as a celebratory moment, is that something that would be?
I'm just one person, but that would seem to be more
consistent with what we
appealing.
have
We
right
should
now.
go to public comment.
Yeah, okay. but-
Just a question,
but
just throwing it out there.
I only point out, I think the building, I'm not an architect and so on, I think the building looks nice. I'm thrilled that JP Morgan's making an investment in this town. I think it's great. It's a very prominent location, obviously, on a very busy intersection. So I think you're gonna get the prominence of whether it's 45 feet or 48 feet. I think you're gonna get that.
Understood.
That wow factor, so.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your
Okay,
support. We
thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions before I move to public comment? Nope. All right, so I'll open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the room who would like to speak to this project? Wow. I guess not. Well, then, now you get to hear from us, for real. So, who wants to kick it off?
Anybody?
Go ahead.
I'll go.
We'll start up with you, Rob.
This isn't a long discussion. I mean, Bob summed it up well, and we're thrilled. I do think, as I'm looking at this, I think where you're talking about the celebration of an element is in line. And I know nobody loves tall ceilings more than me, but I think we're looking at more of a downtown celebration of the tall ceilings versus a village. And I think you can still have great impact with still meeting closer to our requirements, and that's the only thing. Otherwise, I think I look forward to seeing this, the services and things you're gonna do in the building to make it fit into the community. I know you guys will do a good job there, but I think that's the only glaring concern. Parking obviously is, I'm thrilled you're hiring more people. That's great. I just, keep an eye on how that will truly impact the parking underneath. 80 employees is a lot for, and I'm not sure how many of those spaces you think are gonna go to employees versus customers, but is there any thought of what the mix is? 80% employees, 20% customers, or?
Our customers will be with.
Say again, I'm sorry?
Our customers will be, most important, so we'll accommodate them first.
Right.
Right, so
Okay.
I don't think we have a daily count of how many customers will be parking there. We have some estimates on that. It's generally around 10
Okay.
at any given time.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
Well, I'll go. I don't like the design. I guess I don't know if anybody else, I mean, I feel like after looking at the original French design on One Winnetka, I think of all the discussions we have on the look and feel of Winnetka, I feel like this, it's a beautiful building. It's not that I don't like the building, it's just I don't think it feels like Winnetka. It feels to me like.
Excuse me, we don't do that here.
It feels to me like we could maybe, it feels very 1960s Ann Arbor administration building, because that's where I went to college. Like, all the administration buildings looked like that. And so I wonder if there's a way to step it back from, because it's also very massive. I don't have as much of an issue with the height if it can be stepped back with more articulation. That's my feeling. But I think of parking as a concern. I mean, we just went through, a long discussion about 2 apartments and where that extra parking was going to be provided. I mean, that's if we're going to 80 to 100 employees here and taking up village parking spaces that would otherwise go to, that would be long-term parking spaces for employees versus, parking for people visiting to our businesses. I think that's something we have to be sensitive to. But obviously, very happy that JP Morgan is looking to invest. I think we can make it more Winnetka, and we spend so much time talking about what the look and feel of Winnetka is. And I'm not a fan of Tudor, So I'm not saying it's Tudor, but I think there's something that can feel more contextual than what I think is a very 1960s administration look. But it's beautiful. It just feels more Evanston to me.
That's a good way to put it.
And I love Evanston. I go there all the time.
Next, who wants to jump in?
I'll jump in, Chris. Again, I'm not going to repeat my comments. I think the height is an issue, whether it can be articulated differently or masked differently or whatever, but I think Tina's right. I think just the structure itself, as it is, just seems too gargantuan, and that height is part of it. The only thing I would say, and again, I let the genius architects figure out your questions, Tina, because I think they're good ones, but I do think that, and it was mentioned earlier, I think, Tina, you mentioned, Rob mentioned, I think staff, well before the approval, needs to think about the logistics of this building going up, of the building at 564 going up, of the building across the train tracks possibly going ahead. I think, Rob, you mentioned just sort of the chaos of that amount of building. I think we should get ahead of that in terms of, you know, approving these so that they're right on top of each other and the projects are delayed, and so I do think the staff needs to get in front of this early on and make it part of the discussion as this winds through the process, because that could affect timing and it could affect, you know, their plans. So anyway, I'm glad you're making this proposal, and I'll be interested in watching it go through the process.
Great. Chris, a question for the builders in this group. The time envelope seems, for a building like this, pretty reasonable.
It's a small building.
Okay.
No, I mean,
I thought it was reasonable.
no, I mean, this is only 30,000 feet. It's not like a big building or anything. And, you know, whatever frame they use, I imagine, you know, I mean, I would imagine this is probably going to be steel studs and bar joist. No?
No, but
Don't tell me you're going to do poured concrete.
No, it's evaluating a couple different systems, structural steel. There is some concrete, wood frames, also the wood mass timber. It's actually.
Oh, wood is good,
Okay, good.
but it shrinks, so remember that too, especially on 50-foot buildings.
I'm
Next,
just curious.
Bridget?
Rob wasn't done.
I actually, I'm not sure how Winnetka it is, but I do like the building. And I actually, as soon as I saw the three, I wrote down 1917 because I thought, oh, this looks just like the one from 1917, and I thought that was kind of neat. I do think it seems a bit looming and probably would need to be scaled back a little bit. I'm not as inclined to negotiate parking for a bank as I am for like an experimental residence. You know, the last one, like that I think is a unique thing that we're trying to solve a bunch of problems with, and it's a nice thing to try, but I think we've heard loud and clear that parking is an issue, so we need to be very aware of that. I like all of the people that would be walking around, the 80 employees using our stores, that's great. For the community benefit, I'm not sure that sustainable strategies is necessarily a community benefit. That seems like good building, like what all forward-thinking builders should be doing. I'm not saying what we should be asking for, whether it's electric charging stations for cars or something like that, but I'm not sure that that falls in for the planned development portion of it as, you know, benefit to the community, although it's nice and it's what a good builder should be doing. In general, I think, other than it feeling looming, I think that it's very attractive. I like the clock, and I'm glad that you're doing it. So.
Great. Kirk, you want to take off?
Sure. I'll echo the comments on the building height. Just because it's at a prominent corner location, I don't think justifies the additional height, especially when the height is all in the parapet. Doesn't serve any functional purpose other than to block the mechanical units, which is a great idea. I would encourage the design team to reconsider the height and to make it fit as best as possible within the village guidelines, especially considering, as Bob had mentioned, the just straight up the street, 2 or 3 lots where we had considered a variance request. They had thoughtfully stepped the building back, even though they weren't necessarily asking for a height variance, but they wanted to adhere to the village guidelines. And I think there's a tipping point for the village as well. Every time, I mean, you know, we just saw the one Winnetka, and we did approve, sorry, I'm mixing up my meetings here. Design Review Board just reviewed and did make a recommendation to approve the project, which includes a height variance request. I think the danger point at this location is just, you know, let's fast forward 50, 100 years when this building is still standing. The next applicant comes in and says, well, we really think, you know, 56 feet would be nice, or 60 feet. And I just want to, in the spirit of the residential nature of the community, I think there are strategies you could employ in a design to still achieve the prominence that the location demands without having to go too far beyond what the height requirement dictates. I will, contrary to Tina's comments, I will comment, I was enlightened when I saw the materials in the last number of days that's coming through. I'm excited about the design. I think it's refreshing and new. You know, as others have commented, I think a little bit of the fallacy is the expectation that we want everything to be Tudor, and it's refreshing to see something different. I appreciate, and the design being a nod to the Art Deco. There's a little bit of, and I think, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but there's a little bit of Mad Men sort of, you know, mid-century modern, I think, with some of the extra pieces in here, and I think it's all really cool, and with the right materials, as you've described, I think it can be really tastefully done and a beautiful addition to the village. Two other things I'll just comment on, I think it's more for village discussion, is number one, the transformer, as was with the one Winnetka, and sort of it sounds like there was a lot of challenges trying to locate that transformer, and that was a large site, and I think they had a very creative, thoughtful solution. We have a more dense or more urban site with this location, and you know, there is a trade-off between parking and convenience for the transformer, and I think probably be worthwhile internally within the village to analyze what happens as these business lots turn over and there's a need for more of these transformers. Is it a little bit of the tail that wags the dog from a convenience or functionality standpoint for the electric utility versus, let's say, a user experience or just a functionality experience for the actual use of the property? Because I just get a little bit concerned that we're going to have these conveniently located but prominent and otherwise useful locations dedicated for transformers. The second item is the parking. I think it's, you know, Bob, you brought up at the one of the recent village board meetings for the project just up the street from here. I think it'd be really healthy and helpful for the village to really start thinking about parking in our commercial districts. I recently saw on LinkedIn somebody drew a map, like in extreme example, but Manhattan, if they actually, you know, had parking requirements in Manhattan, it'd be like an area larger than Central Park. And no, we're not Manhattan, we don't want to ever be, but you know, we need to think about what do we want our downtowns to be, what is the right size between, if parking is a requirement, or if it's an expectation as a right, then what does that mean in terms of the amount of density, whether it's building scale, the occupants, the type of use that our downtowns would have? And I just, as a developer and having been in the design side for many years, just thinking about if parking is what sort of influences our urban fabric, and I think it's just it's a question that we need to address and find out where are the priorities. I personally have the mindset that parking isn't necessarily an expected right. You shouldn't, and this is just my personal opinion, you shouldn't have to expect to have one-to-one parking for occupants or users, especially in a neat downtown where you want to eliminate as much as possible these empty, you know, broken teeth lots that are just dedicated for parking where it could be a higher and better use for the experience of the occupants. And so those are my only two comments, just more, not as much rhetorical, but just more of a tasking us as a village to really think about those things. And I would just comment, you know, like I'm excited because we have one Winnetka that's been percolating for many years. we have the new building that's gonna go in up the street, we have this one, and I feel like we're almost at a tipping point where, you know, success breeds success, and I think we're, you know, this only adds to the value quotient of our community instead of being older, tired, still bucolic or beautiful downtowns, but I would expect we're gonna have more of these development opportunities or proposals coming to our town. So it's important for us to think through these things and stick to our, you know, what we believe is right, so we can help create something that is consistent and of high value throughout all of our downtowns. That's all my comments.
And I'll let you go talk to Brian by yourself, okay?
Will do.
Just let me know if you get out.
I like how you said it with the tail that wags.
Meet him out in the open, that's all I can say. I had the same conversation with him, so it would benefit you, Kirk, to sit down with him and really understand the technical aspects of the transformer locations. Kim?
Yep. I'll echo sixth comment on just concerned about the height. I do love the fact that this is truly going to be a building that is sort of a landmark at the corner and is designed to be a bank. I mean, I've always loved when you go into downtown banks, that historic feeling of the grand lobby that was designed to be, you know, so many banks in our area, unfortunately now are retrofitted into other commercial spaces and just don't have that really lovely feeling, which I can tell you're trying to bring here. So if we can keep some of that and maybe bring the second and third floors down a little bit, I have a feeling everyone would feel a lot more comfortable. I love the whole corner feel with the clock and all those nods to history like that, even if it's, and I know you mentioned, I know I said I felt it was a little modern, but you've said obviously you're not done yet with some of the design elements that might bring a little more historical feel to the building in the limestone and whatever. I also love I think you referred to it as the structural rhythm of the building, that it doesn't look necessarily just like one big block on the corner, which is really, I think, a lovely design that should be continued to work on. So that's it for me.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll throw my 2 cents worth in. And I'm usually not kind to architects, so just accept that as what it is, okay? I don't see anything contextual about the building. I mean, the program I get totally, but I don't see this in the context of Winnetka in any way, including the new buildings that are coming online. I'm sorry. Maybe it's the materials, you know, the punch windows, it's just, it wouldn't be a building that I would build, but I'm not building the building. The man behind you is, so that, I think that matters a lot too. But I think the architecture, you know, when you say it's contextual, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but I know you're gonna have to defend that at design review. And I don't see a lot of context, Winnetka context in this particular building. Little things, and I know this is still conceptual and still in progress. Those round top palladium windows drive me nuts. It looks like something that I would have done back in the 80s, to be honest with you. And of course, if they're executed properly with the right materials, they can probably look pretty cool, but I don't see it as that here. The height does not bother me at all. I mean, I can see the building for what it is, and I see what you're trying to do. If you could, you know, articulate that a little bit more and maybe work on that, especially on the corner, that would be a really important thing. Public benefit, I don't see any. And, you know, green architecture and locating a utility transformer are not public benefits, at least not in this room. They never have been, and they haven't been for the other plan development proposals that have come through here. So I think you got to think a little bit more on what you guys are going to leave behind to the community, and think hard about that, because these are questions that will be asked in the future. And with respect to the parking, there's two bad numbers there. I mean, There's a potential of 80 employees, 80 to 100, and 30 parking spaces. I know we're a built-out community. You can't, nobody can rely on village parking as being the answer to their solutions. I know our codes are, what, 2 per thousand? Going the other way is gonna be a tough road. It really is. And not just from here, but the two bodies that you will be going through in the future will definitely be on that bandwagon as well. And rightfully so, because the parking is something that your neighbors are constantly complaining about already. Your neighbors down the street, you know, our retailers, and I hear it from them every time. Of course, most retailers would like you to build a parking deck right across the street from their space so that they could have unlimited parking, but at the same time, you need to know that is a sensitivity, particularly with the merchants, and you've heard it from several of my colleagues up here. Let's see, architecture, public benefit, windows, box okay. I can't even remember what my own notes said. So, but I am, you know, I think there's a way that you can massage this thing into something that the community can really get behind. I'm glad to see that Chase is elected to reinvest in Winnetka. That's really an important thing. There was a lot of talk about a year ago that Chase would be ending up in the One Winnetka building, and the owners of that project were really happy to tell everybody that you all were moving your private wealth into that space. Of course, there was never an LOI or anything like that, so we know what that was, which was just a lot of talk. And I'm glad to see that you're consolidating your space in here. I'm a customer. I spend a lot of time in the bank, and certainly it doesn't feel like what you're talking about, Kim, you know. And I'm still used to the LaSalle Street banks where you walk in and everything is. And I think when we talk about height, we have to remember that. You know, when you think about height in public buildings that handle a lot of people, just think of the ones we have in town here. I mean, the Grand is a good example. It's probably a 16, 18-foot high ceiling in there. I had a bunch of other ones in my mind, but well, the lobby, you know, the first floor here is exceptionally tall. And there are other examples of that throughout the community, particularly in institutional buildings where, you know, this is just part of their identity and placemaking for that particular product. But you've heard what my colleagues have to say about height, so something to work on. And that's all I have, because I can't remember what box okay means, so, but whatever it is, it's okay. Okay, so, all right, so that will pretty much end our discussion on that, and thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in future iterations, and to having robust involvement with all of our advisory boards as well. So thanks. Good stuff. All right. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I made public comment on both issues. I'm feeling pretty good. Item 11, appointments. I have a design review board chairperson, which would be to appoint the current design review board member, Katie Moore, to a full term as the chair of the design review board, filling Kirk's vacant slot. May I have a motion to appoint Katie Moore?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries, thank you. Katie will do a good job, by the way. All right, item B tonight is the Plan Development Commission members. And we are going to appoint members for a 2-year term on the Plan Development Commission. Their terms will expire on April 30th, 2025. Per village code, the composition of the PDC rotates every 2 years. So it's good that this is happening now, just on the onset of One Winnetka and potentially this project. So we'll have a highly functioning group.
All new members? I was a little confused. How many existing members, how many new members? Any idea?
No.
Matt has been the chair before as a
Oh, David knows. Thank you, David.
There are two from each body that will continue over from the previous composition of the commission. So two from the Plan Commission and two from the ZBA will continue on.
And the two chairs,
Both were on it before. Matt was on it and Layla was also on it before. So Matt will
Well,
serve
actually-
as the chair.
And Matt has been the chair before.
Correct.
Bridget was the other chair, right? Yes. So Matt has been the chair.
So there are 9 members and there, so 4 are new members? So
Yeah.
2, does that make sense?
yeah, I think Golan was on the original PDC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, John was. Layla was.
John, Layla, Matt.
Mamie has been on the Plan Commission.
Yeah, she's been on for a
long
while.
time.
And
Liz Cummings.
Yeah, and then Matt and Lynn Hanley both were on the
And Lynn, yeah.
previous.
So then Mike and Todd are new.
Correct.
So, well, for the record, so that the village attorney doesn't kick me under the table again, I need to say all these names. So we have Matt Bradley, will be the PDC chair for this term. He's the current chair of the ZBA. Lynn Hanley, who's a ZBA. Mike Nielsen, who's a ZBA. Todd Vender, who's a ZBA. Layla Danley, who will now be the vice chair, and she's the current chair of the Plan Commission. Mamie Case is a Plan Commission rep. Chris Foley is a Plan Commission rep. John Golan is a Plan Commission rep. And Liz Kunkel is a Plan Commission rep. So that makes up the board. And I need a motion to appoint.
I move to appoint the slate for the PDC,
Thank you.
PDC positions.
Thank you. I would have fumbled for 5 more minutes. We got a second? Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those all get appointed. Item 12, closed session, we have none. And item 13 is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.